Night Live in West Hartford, Connecticut, 2019. We're talking about the municipal elections, and we are getting some results in already, and we'll be talking about those. My name is Pat Kazakoff. I'm your moderator for this evening, and on my right, I have Chris Barnes. He's the outgoing minority leader, still serving, but not running for election. He's the highest ranking Republican. He's a lawyer. They call him the counselor. That's his nickname. But he told me he never heard of it before, which is unusual. He was elected first time in 2013. He served 3 terms, ran 2016 as state rep in the 19th district, losing to Derek Slapp. Welcome, Chris Barnes.
Thank you, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here.
And on my left, I have Judy Casperson. She's a 20-year resident of West Hartford, 4-term town councilor from 2009 to 2017. That's 8 years. And I think some of the time, both of you overlapped, I think, for 2 terms. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. She has 2 children, and she says they all went through the West Hartford school system, but now they are launched millennials. She's a banking executive at Santander Bank. She was chairman Human Services and sat on the Public Safety Committee. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Pat.
So what indeed are the big issues in this election?
Well, on election day, the big issues are always the candidates, right? So we've got, the 6 Democrats that are running, and I think there are always some issues with how, those votes are going to come in and how they're going to sit at the table. And this year we have 6 other candidates running. We have 5 Republican candidates and 1 Working Families Party candidate on row C, Janae Woods-Weber. And Janae's been very publicly talking about taking one of the minority seats away from the Republicans, which they've held for a very long time. So it'll be interesting looking at the candidates, see how the votes come in, and see what the voters do after 3.5 months of campaigning.
So this is the first time I think West Hartford has had a working families candidate?
At least in my memory, I don't recall that being the case.
So why, Judy, why did she become a working families candidate as opposed to a Democrat?
Well, I think that she was being considered to run on the Democratic ticket, but we had Carol Banks, who was coming from the Board of Education with that wealth of knowledge coming onto the council. I felt, I think that the committee felt that she would be the better candidate. And Janae decided not to wait until another term and to step out on this ticket.
Now, would that make a big difference if there were two Republicans and 1 person and 1 working family? Would that make a big difference?
Well, I think that of course, but you have many different ideas coming to the table. But I think that in municipal government, when everybody's concern is really for the people in the community of West Hartford, having working families represented, if that's who receive the votes, then they need fair representation from that perspective.
Right, but would it make a philosophical difference? What do you think, Chris?
I think it would, and it would depend on whether you were a Democrat or a Republican. If you're a Republican, we've been 6-3. We've been the minority party. We voted no on the budget over 10 straight years. At least all 6 of my years, it's been 6-3. So that wouldn't change, even if it was 7-2. I think what we would find if we had a Working Families Party on the council, member on the council, that the council would pull left, that we would see a council that would be pressured to move left on the spectrum, and I think that would create momentum. So it would impact the Democrats, maybe not so much the Republicans, but I think it would put voters in town on notice, at least in the next election cycle, that the direction our town is heading, and may have an impact in that next election cycle.
Any other issues that are sort of big in this municipal election?
As we discussed before, and maybe some of the more, not as interesting issues, certainly affordability, budget, taxes, affordability in town. I think a lot of the candidates on both sides of the aisle were talking about that issue as we see budgets continue to increase in very substantial amounts, which puts a huge amount of pressure on our property tax base as people pay more and more out of pocket, puts pressure on seniors who are on fixed income potentially, and certainly on younger families that want to move into our community but are unable to do so because it is so expensive.
But this isn't a change, this affordability issue. I mean, this is not an original issue. This is an issue that's been around for a long time. And West Hartford, 89%, I understand that 89% of the revenue of West Hartford comes from the tax, from the property taxes, of which 72% represent residents. Like, why, is this a bigger issue now, or what has changed that you're mentioning it?
Well, it's mentioned every year. It's the long-standing discussion that we have, but people move to West Hartford for a certain standard of living. They understand the costs, they understand the challenges, they understand the benefits that they're receiving from the education system. When I moved here in 2000, I said to my husband, I don't care if we live in an apartment, but my children are going to West Hartford Public Schools. And because for me, it was like the private school that I went to. So when you're getting that kind of education,
you had that vision?
Oh,
that
absolutely.
the public school in West Hartford is like the private school that you went to. Where did you go to school?
So I went to the Kent School for Girls, which is like the Miss Porters of Colorado. It was a boarding school and independent. And, I saw the same dedication from the teachers. When I was coming up here to live, I made 3 separate trips, different times of day, to Connecticut to look in the school systems because I wanted my children to have engaged educators, and I found that in West Hartford.
Well, is education, I'm reading all the profiles of all the candidates, and I'm not seeing education mentioned that much.
Well, certainly your Board of Education members are going to be talking about, education in the schools as an issue. Your town councilors, not so much, but I think everybody appreciates how well run the school system is and how well respected it is. It really comes down to cost. This affordability issue, we have, pretty stable home prices, although decreasing of late, but we also have a very high mill rate. And when you put those two things together, that creates a very high tax liability. And that not only impacts your homeowners, but also your renters, right? Because the owner of that building has to pay rent on the building, which is going to be passed down to your rent if you're living there. And so it's it's a high cost, and a lot of people like to say a high service community, although some of the services have been cut back and some of the other things cost more in terms of fees. We're paying more for things. So it's almost like the residents in town feel like they're paying more and getting less, and that's creating a tension.
Well, I notice in Rick Bush's profile, he's talking a lot about the MDC. He's talking a lot about paying more for water. Am I correct?
That is correct. It's just really trying to find ways that after we set our tax base, after the mill rate set, then we also have to add in MDC costs. We have to pay for the sewer. We have to pay for clean water. So looking to see how we might be able to work those costs down in the future could have a great impact on the constituents of West Hartford, to really lower the tax rate. So even if we have a decreased budget, all costs go up, right? Other services go up. So we can be looking to decrease spending every year, but if you have those other costs escalating, then it seems as if we're raising taxes. When the mill rate's really staying more level, we're really pretty competitive from that perspective. I think Fairfield County, a state, one of the counties there has a little higher mill rate, or a little lower, excuse me. But other than that, we are affected by MDC.
And but is this an issue all the way across the board? This business with the water, is that an issue through all the candidates, or is that just somebody's particular issue?
Well, I think it has to be an issue. So the points that Judy made are right on, right? So we've got issues about the cost of our water, and we have issues with respect to the bill that we pay through our budget, which goes up about $1 million and $1.5 million per year. But there's another issue. There's an issue that Rick Bush and his neighbors over in the Leonard and Linwood area confronted with some flooding in their homes,
right,
and some broken pipes.
That is why he got interested in that issue.
Right.
He had a personal experience.
He did, and he didn't receive really kind of correct or honest information up front when he pursued it. And I think when he finally heard the real story, he was upset about that and decided that he wanted to run. But that issue is an issue about stormwater infrastructure throughout our community. And I've heard from some that it's potentially a $500 million town-wide issue that currently would be the town's responsibility to fix, because this infrastructure is very old, has not been maintained, and we're seeing failures all over town with this system. And the MDC is saying to West Hartford, you need to step up and do something about it. It's your responsibility. And apparently we haven't. And so over the next year or so, that issue is going to come to a head. And I mean, to put it in perspective, we have unfunded pension liabilities and we have OPEB and retiree health care liabilities. This $500 million number is higher.
But that, if it's an MDC problem, it can't be just West Hartford. That has to extend to other communities in Connecticut in this area also. We can't be the only ones with that problem. Am I correct?
Well, you are correct to a degree. So when Hartford was falling short, they were calling upon other communities, West Hartford being one of the main ones, to bridge that gap or to cover the cost until they could come up to speed. And so we are affected in ways that you don't imagine when you're sitting down at the table to make a budget. So when it comes to that, we are adversely affected by other communities. So I think that really looking at some changes there could greatly benefit the town of West Hartford and other outlying communities, but really looking at perhaps how they might be able to assist us in paying for some of those changes and giving us some consideration for discounts.
So this isn't just a Republican issue. This is a Republican Democrat town-wide resident issue.
Yeah, this is a big issue.
Big issue, yeah.
And with respect to the question about the other towns, so there are 8 member towns that are part of the MDC. I'm not aware of what their current situations are. They may have maintained their infrastructure. It may be not as old as ours. They certainly don't have as much, other than, I would say, probably the city of Hartford. But I know the MDC has done a lot of work in Hartford to fix their issues. And so it is a big deal for us. I think a lesser deal for other communities. But nonetheless, it's a big problem that we are going to be facing. And when you talk to people about their water bill, how much we're paying for the sewer charge and how much we're potentially going to be paying for this infrastructure, they're big numbers.
Right. And the budget has to accommodate that on some level.
Yes.
On some level. So I want to switch a little bit. We were talking about the candidates. So the Republican candidates, I noticed they're a pretty diverse bunch.
Yes, we have a great slate. So we have 5 candidates that are running this year by kind of longevity or tenure. Chris Williams is running for his 3rd term on the council. Mary Fay, Chris is a lawyer here in West Hartford, actually just over the line in Hartford with Conway Stoughton. Mary Fay is a former executive now running the state of Connecticut, I believe the retirement program, the newly development
financial services executive. Yes.
She's running for her 2nd term. We also have Lee Gold, who is a new candidate. Raised a ton of money from what I understand, put out a ton of signs. He's an attorney and has been very impressive as a candidate. We also have Al Cortez, who approached us. He lives down in Elmwood. He is was in the Army National Guard. He was part of the Corrections Department for about 20 years and has been interested in getting involved in local politics and approached us and has been a great, hardworking candidate, and it's been nice to have someone in the Elmwood community serving.
It's a really diverse slate.
And I don't want to leave out, got one more, Rick Bush.
Bush, you know what Rick Bush's name is?
No.
Go for the dunk, Ricky Bush. The fun fact about Ricky Bush is that he was on the basketball team at UConn, working under...
Jim Calhoun?
Jim Calhoun.
Yes. Okay, well, I did not know that
That's
nickname
why I
either.
It. And I'm mentioning it for everybody to hear also.
I'm sure he's going to be glad to hear that nickname. And so Rick as well is a first-time candidate. and as we've talked about, very interested in the MDC issues, and also worked very hard on the campaign. So 5 Republicans running, all did a excellent job during the cycle.
Well, I'm just noticing that it's a very diverse group of Republicans. Like they come from very, very different places. And does this signify like a change? I mean, you have Al Cortez, who is a corrections officer, and like you said, you had Lee Gold, who is a lawyer, and Chris Williams, who is a lawyer, Mary Fay. It's a really diverse group, and you don't usually think of Republicans in diversity. Is the town changing? Is there something going on here?
I don't think so townwide. I think we're very happy. You're correct. I mean, there have been campaign cycles where we haven't had a very diverse slate of candidates. This slate is, and we're very happy to have this group of folks that want to run. Running for the council is not an easy thing. It's not easy to find people that actually want to volunteer their time and be involved. So it's a great sign. But overall in town, when we look at the numbers, and I looked at them again today, there are only about just over 6,000 registered Republicans. There are almost 19,000 registered Democrats, so over 3 to 1. And then about 14,000 unaffiliated voters.
So the biggest group is the unaffiliated voters.
No, not today. So
not today.
19. Well, according to Ronnie Newton this morning, and Ronnie is the source, 19,000 registered Democrats in town, about 6,300 Republicans, and about 14,000 unaffiliated voters. So those are the numbers, and so you can see, you know, with over 3 to 1 mix Republican to Democrat, it's a huge gap. So I don't think we're seeing, from the Republican perspective, a diversity change. Overall, throughout our town, we may be seeing a diversity change.
And it's reflected.
Potentially in the Republican slate that you're seeing.
What about the Democrats? Who do you have running?
So we have, of course, our Mayor Sherry Cantor, who's born and raised in West Hartford, educated all of her sons here, and she's a CPA, but she's also worked as an advocate for the schools and many nonprofit organizations.
She has 4 boys.
She has 4 boys and 1 daughter-in-law.
That's right.
And, you know, they're in college or launched, I'd say. And but her husband Michael has a law firm downtown. He's been really an international one. So she's been a partner in many respects. She's also on the Yukon Board of Trustees. And she, you know, like I said, she works tirelessly, but she's brilliant from that perspective. She's always been on the Finance Committee, which is one of those reasons why we have a AAA bond rating, is smart, forward thinking to keep our town strong. And the next person is Beth Kerrigan, who has been the deputy mayor. She is retired from the insurance. She sold her business. She had
to Travelers.
And she has 2 adopted twin sons and her wife. And she has been an advocate for the LGBTQ community.
So Beth Kerrigan, she's the deputy mayor.
Correct.
And there was an upset, I think, in 2017 when Leon Davidoff was the deputy mayor. Okay,
that's
interesting.
correct. So when Beth came on, I think people were excited to have representation. So you get more votes out, whether they're Republican or Democrat. So
you just mentioned that she was LGBT, that she's a big supporter of LGBTQ,
yes,
etc. I'm not hearing a lot about that in this election, which I think says a lot about West Hartford, that we're not just diverse in name, we're diverse in feeling, because none of that has been mentioned in this campaign.
And I think that when people feel that they have the representation that they need, they don't need to wave, that particular
flag
for, when everyone is hopefully being represented, and that's what we're all trying to bring to the table. So, and the next we have, I'm thinking we're going to Leon Davidoff. Who has a small business in Newington, as well as being an attorney. So he brings that dual perspective to the council. He was on the zoning commission as well before that, and also was served in the town of Newington. He has raised 2 daughters here as well, and with him and his wife Lonnie, and he loves serving in West Hartford.
What I hear about him is that he's very well prepared.
He is.
And he's one of those people who, when he comes to the town council meeting, he comes well prepared.
That's true, and one of the things that I laugh, because I've sat next to him, he comes in and he prepares, he puts his statements out in a way that educates the constituents as well as serves as an opinion and a representation for them. So I think that that's something unique about his personal style, but I've enjoyed it. And then we have Ben Winograd, who has raised one daughter here with his wife, and he has done many things. He's, comes with a legal mind as well to the table.
He's a big activist.
He is. He is.
He's also a big supporter of LGBTQ.
Yes.
And also women, health issues for women. He's
Yes.
a big supporter.
He is. And then we have...
I should mention another fun fact about him.
You should.
Yes, I noticed that he always mentions his mother, Marlene.
Okay.
In all his profiles, his mother, Marlene, is mentioned.
Wow.
So I think that's a fun fact.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think, and the next person we have is Liam Sweeney. So Liam is someone who was raised in West Hartford, moved back with his family here. He has worked tirelessly with youth, disadvantaged youth, and he also has worked to show that, it is possible to move back to West Hartford and raise your family. Him and his wife, Whitney, have 2 children, and he was one of the people, he, took my seat when I left. I fully supported him when he came in. I really thought that we needed that perspective as well represented, and I was really excited when he was
And he's
able to
a big supporter of the bridge also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was on the bridge board for 6 years.
So you know that.
I
You
love
know
the
that
bridge.
aspect.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about,
Then we have Carol Banks.
you are correct.
Yes, we don't want to forget Carol because Carol has, been a strong, she was the head of the council, or excuse me,
Board
the
of
Board
Ed.
of Education, and now coming onto the council, she's going to bring that perspective, as well as really wanting to bridge now that her children, she's an empty nester now, really understanding where the next phase of where we need to be in reference to how we can balance, the school budgets with where we are in the town. So I think that perspective is great and needed on the council because that's something that we try to manage well so that we don't have increased taxes. So I think it's a great perspective.
Talking about Carol Blanks, is this common? She was chairman of the Board of Ed, and now she is coming over to
Yeah.
the town council. Is that common for people to go back and forth?
I think it's a wealth of knowledge that we bring. Claire Kendall did that a few years back, and I don't know whoever else has done that, but I was a part of when Claire Kendall came over, and just the wealth of knowledge that she brought and the perspective was very helpful.
Yeah, it seems to me to make a lot of sense.
It
But I
is.
was wondering if it was common.
Not on our side. On the Republican side, I don't recall
Yeah.
when we've had a candidate or Board of Ed member come over to the council or the other way.
I just think that it's very important to build a strong knowledge base, experience base when you're talking about, just trying to build for the future and build into what is West Hartford. You want to have a government that is knowledgeable about more than one aspect of the town.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's not mentioned is that, well, all these people who all these town councilors, they all work for free. I don't know if anybody knows that, but you all work for free, and it's all public service,
Yeah.
and that's an important point. And what's also important, that's very special about West Hartford, is people love West Hartford. They don't just like it, they love it. Nobody moves from West Hartford to another place. They want to be here. This is the place to be. And, it's just impressive having both of you. I want to say that. I'm not
Yeah.
ending this, but I just wanted to, I had that in my mind.
It's not over. We're
No,
not
it's
done?
not over. No.
Well-
I want to talk a little bit. We have some of the results have come in, and if you could just squeeze over, take a look at what's going on, and tell me what you're thinking on the Republican side, Chris. I'm just going to push this over a little bit to you. You
Well-
see some of the numbers coming in. All the polling stations have come in except Bristow, and here you have You
I see.
You
Yep.
take a look. You have Mary Fay. Take a look
I
and
see.
tell me
Yeah.
what you think.
So without Bristow reporting, it looks like Lee Gold is, from the Republican side, is in the top vote getter seat, which is very impressive to be a first-time candidate, potentially being eligible for the minority leader position.
So he becomes the minority leader because he has the most votes.
For the caucus. Did you want to add anything, Judy?
Well, and, you know, but it still is by a vote.
Actually, for the minority position, it's not.
Oh, really?
At least that's what Sherry informed me 2 years ago, that it's not a voted position.
Because
it's
that's
just
what
the
you
top.
were.
It was because I was waiting for the vote, and she just said. Actually, she didn't say anything. She didn't even acknowledge I was the minority leader. It was just kind of, no, actually, you can watch the video. She
Okay,
did.
we don't.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't
So,
have to. Yeah, you're both okay with this.
So we didn't vote. So yes, so Lee would move into that seat as the highest vote getter based upon these incomplete results. It looks like Chris Williams is currently in second, Mary Fay in third, followed by Rick Bush and Al Cortez. And it looks like based upon these numbers, Janae Woods-Weber coming in sixth place out of that group as the row C candidate. So very interesting with Lee up top, certainly Chris and Mary doing well, and Rick and Al making a very impressive showing as well.
So just give us a little just give us a little education here, and tell us, how does it work exactly regarding the votes as to who gets in and who doesn't? Does it go in order of vote getting?
Well, it does. You know, that's how it has always been run, but it is by a vote of the majority that we do have that conversation. But, you know,
So the person who gets the most votes, the first person, the second highest vote getter, those people get in. That's how it works.
correct.
Right.
Okay. So what are you taking a look here? Take a look at the Democratic polls. What are you seeing here, Judy?
So it looks like, as expected, or, you know, just keeping in line with where we have been, we show Sherry Cantor in the lead, followed by...
That means that she's going to be the mayor.
She is the mayor.
Actually, that's a vote.
Yes.
So that is a vote.
But
So the mayor.
She is the mayor.
But who is
She's
that?
currently the mayor.
Yes,
So-
but,
But that would be a vote
correct.
And that would be a vote by who?
of the council.
Yeah.
The council.
Yes.
And based on the fact that she got the top votes, that wouldn't get her in as mayor?
It usually does.
It does. We
but
run it that way, but that doesn't mean...
But it's not necessarily so.
Right, and I believe there have been instances where you've had a second highest vote getter not become the deputy mayor because of how the votes go, and probably a lot of other circumstances. So it doesn't always hold serve. It usually does, but not always.
So it's not a governance rule that the highest vote getter gets the position.
No, it's by vote.
It's by vote. Okay, so let's keep going. Judy?
So we have Beth Kerrigan coming in as deputy mayor currently, or in second place. We have then Ben Winograd. Leon
No,
Davidoff.
yeah, Leon Davidoff.
Yes. And then Ben Winograd, Liam Sweeney, and then Carol Blanks.
So are you seeing any big, are you seeing any big upsets here? Because I'm not seeing any.
Well, I think that I'm excited to see the numbers that we are seeing for Carol Blanks. I mean, at 65.98, I think she could, you know, get 6,600, which is really good for a first-time showing. But having Sherry on the other spectrum at almost 8,500, that clearly states that she has the support of the people who've come out to vote. And I think that speaks well of who she is and what she's done for our town.
So far the lowest vote getter here is Janae Woods-Weber. Is that saying something to you?
Well, it's saying that people don't necessarily understand what her party might be about, or they don't want to upset the balance of what has been working well or what is working in our town. You know, it could be many of those things. People might not know who she is,
But they wouldn't know who Al Cortez is either.
But if he's on the Republican ticket, you understand where his thinking might be,
his positioning.
and where the votes might go.
What do you say to that? What are you thinking?
If Janae ran as a Democrat, she would have 6,500 votes. Right?
You think so?
Oh yeah, she'd be on the council. If they endorsed her and she ran as a Democrat, she would be on the council. So because she was on row C, As Judy mentioned, maybe some people aren't as familiar with the Working Families Party. But also, when you go out to vote, if you're a Democrat and you're going out to vote and you're going to vote for Janae, that means you're not voting for one of your six. And so you're asking them to split their ticket. And it shows a lot of them aren't inclined to do that. So that's the group that she would need to get. And I think what people are saying is they like their five. They like Carol as well because they've seen her work on the Board of Education. They like the six. And so I think that's one reason why you're seeing, Janae where she is. I met Janae tonight for the first time at Brayburn, and we had a conversation. She was very nice, very articulate. I hope she continues to run, but running from that row C is a tough spot to be in.
Right, and I think that I might have misspoken earlier when I was saying Sherry's votes. She's at 98.
Well,
70.
because
They've
two
updated.
because 2 seconds ago, every
Updated.
single poll station just came in. We have
Wonderful.
polls coming in from King Philip, Bristow, Town Hall, Elmwood, Wolcott, Connaught, Sedgwick, Brayburn, and Hall. The totals are in. Absentee ballots are in also. What do you think about these numbers? Are they high? Is the voting high? Is it low? What is that?
I think that it's more impressive than we thought it was going to be.
What, as far as people participating?
Yes, I think that getting people to come out and vote and understand that municipal government really does affect their daily lives, that would get me out of my house. It got me out of my house, and when I saw how active the council was and saw the changes that they were going to be able to affect in town, that's what got me onto the council. I thought, if I have an opportunity to impact this community in a positive way and have, represent seniors, represent maybe those who can't speak for themselves, this is a great opportunity. So it's an opportunity. It is, to be able to come out and vote, and many people don't.
So are these numbers you mentioned, like before you talked about, there's 14,000, 19,000 Democrats, 14,000 unaffiliated. So that's how many people can vote in West Hartford, about 50,000 or
We have
so?
about just over 40,000 registered voters.
40,000 registered voters. So these numbers seem rather impressive, am I not?
Well, because, they're looking at 30% of the vote coming out. If we
That's
get, that's what they were
that's
looking
normal.
at.
That's
for,
normal.
For a year when you're not having a governor's run or when you're not having a presidential election. When you get 30% is what they were looking at. for voter
That's the
turnout.
guideline.
Well, we'd like it to be more. It's just what's,
So what is this? Is this about 30% or is it a little bit more? I think a little more.
It looks a touch higher. A couple things that I've noticed with these final numbers coming in. So one thing that we look at as Republicans, we look at our highest vote getter compared to the lowest Democrat vote getter. And
So who's the highest
so
vote
Lee,
getter?
So Lee Gold's about 5,000. Let's just round up.
Right.
And is Carol the lowest at 76?
yes.
So, that's a 2,600 vote difference, right? So 4 campaign cycles ago, we were looking at maybe 1,700, 1,800. So we're seeing a widening of the gap there. It's a larger gap now between the lowest D and the highest R. And
what is that telling you?
Well,
what is that
that
number telling you?
It's telling me that the registrations of voters in town have shifted. So there used to be about 2,000 more Republicans. They've either turned to unaffiliated voters over the last 6 to 8 years, and we're seeing a higher registration rate for Democrats. So you're seeing just the voting rolls, and then always it's turnout, right? So I think politics has been front of mind for so many people for the last 3 years that they think about it, they think about Election Day, and they want to come out and vote. And voter turnout, I think what we're seeing here is strong. And then what I noticed here, it looks like Mary Fay jumped Chris Williams into the second seat. Chris is now third, if these are the final numbers.
These are the finals.
So you've got Chris in third, Rick pretty close to Chris on the line, and Al Cortez at about 4,000, which with a great showing for a first-time candidate out of Elmwood. And it looks like here Janae comes in at 2,330, so about, 1,600 or so off of Al in the voting. So a respectable showing from a difficult spot, but it looks like she comes in last out of
So you're
voting.
mentioning that you think that there was more interest in this election than normal. Could it be because of I hate to mention this, but I'm going to, the Trump factor?
Well, I think that people were feeling, too many people thought that our last presidential election might have been a slam dunk. I think it was an awakening that if you are not part of the process, you're not part of the solution. So I think that people were more inclined to get out and let their voices be heard. So I think that is, a part of it.
So the Trump factor played into this.
Well, I ran in 2016, I ran in 2017. In 2016, West Hartford broke just about 75-25 for Hillary Clinton over the president. Now, my campaign was like 53-47 or 52-48, so a lot closer, but that's West Hartford, right? There were about 4,000 people that registered to vote within weeks of that election, and you can be sure 90% of them registered to vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So they came out in 16, they came out in 17, 18 we saw the same thing, and I think this year in 2019 is no different, and lo and behold next year's 2020, and it will be a circus nationally, certainly locally.
Well, so also we have the part of the Trump factor is the bad language and the rhetoric. And what can we say about West Hartford? We heard about New Britain. They were remember there was the big news story about Aaron Stewart.
Aaron Stewart, sure.
And also the bad signs, the bad signage in Avon. But none of that in West Hartford.
No, I think that West Hartford remembers that we're neighbors and that we should all be fighting for the same thing, because regardless, at the end of the day, we have, sat down across the table and had coffee.
Yeah.
We've gone, some of us have gone to each other's homes. We're neighbors, and we really should be fighting for the same things in our community. Sometimes our viewpoints are a little different in how we get there, but that doesn't mean that we don't have the best interests of West Hartford.
So the Trump factor played into this in that people came out, but West Hartford didn't adopt the bad behavior.
It's interesting. We did see, at least recently this week, and I'm not sure the why, but Janae Woods-Weber did put out a letter that she wrote and put in the newspaper and tried to use that Trump factor against the Republican candidates and said essentially that Republicans incite, fear and suffering into folks in our community. And quite frankly, it was very strong language, and I thought very divisive language. But that really was the only mention of it that I saw, certainly not among the other candidates. But to ascribe that type of, action to Republicans generally, and perhaps, elected officials that are Republicans as well, I felt was not only basis, but, not really appropriate for the folks in town.
Could it be that West Hartford judged her perhaps poorly because of that?
I don't know.
What are you thinking?
Well, I don't know, but I just don't think that you would get a lot of support for that in West Hartford. I don't think that people want to have that negativity when they're looking to find solutions for our future.
I'm taking a look also. The Board of Ed figures are in.
Okay.
There's not a lot of strain there because everyone is getting in, but look at the amount of votes. I mean, it's really, really high totals. Amanda Aronson, 10,000. I'm going to say 10-4.
Yeah.
Ari Steinberg, a new person, 92-15. Sean Payson at 92-09. And Mark Zdanowicz at 5103. Now that's a little surprising.
Well,
What's that about, Mark Zdanowicz?
So Mark's the Republican candidate, current member of the Board of Education. So the way it looks is he's actually the highest vote getter for the Republicans. And if you look at the numbers, Amanda Aronson would be the highest. Actually, all the Board of Ed members would come in ahead of Sherry. Is that right?
No.
So Amanda would be the highest overall vote getter on election today of all of the candidates. So I'm not sure why they trend slightly higher than the council votes, but those certainly are very strong numbers across the board.
Yeah, and I'd say for Amanda Aronson, she is someone who has worked for many different projects with the schools and of course was on staff at the Bridge Family Center. She has her own firm at this time, but she has done
many, I think that she's well known to the educational, and parents in
Well,
the community.
Amanda Aronson was a teacher by training, and so was Sean Payson, Ari Steinberg, a Democrat, also
Psychologist,
a psychologist, and Mark Zadanowitz. Mark Zadanowitz, what?
He was a businessman for a long time. He worked for Gaida Dairy.
Oh, I think he was a part owner of Gaida,
Correct.
and now he's doing something else. But he's been on the Board of Ed for quite a while, hasn't he?
He has been, yes.
So why is he getting less votes than these new people? What is that about?
Well, he's a Republican.
That?
Oh, yeah. If Mark ran as a Democrat, he'd have 9,500 votes. So, and some of it is simple. Like, some people in town voted row A, usually row A. They vote row A. And if you look at the numbers across the lines for all of the districts, they hold serve across.
Yeah, that makes
and so
sense.
whether folks know those candidates or not, they just know how they're going to vote. And so, like I said, if Mark was running on a D line, Mark would have 9,500 votes.
But I think that, I don't think that for the Board of Education, I don't think that that's the only thing. I really don't. When you look at, Ari Steinberg, she's a psychologist. She's working with with challenged youth. And when you look at Sean, he is an educator. And when you look at Amanda, she's worked in both of those areas. So we're looking at experience, that people are really wanting people who are advocating for children, not that Mark is not. But I think that they want to make sure that the focus stays on the children and that we don't get too much into the business of education, because then you have, other thoughts coming in of, are we spending too much money per child? It becomes those things that you just want to keep the focus on the children. And I
Right.
think that that's what the voters may have been speaking about.
Or it could
more.
be part, and maybe a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Absolutely.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, Mark certainly has the experience of being on the Board of Education.
Yes.
I'm not sure if he has been on 2 full terms or whether he stepped in the middle of a term. So I think he served 6 or 7 years, maybe a little longer. So he has the experience of being on the Board of Education. Certainly reviewing their budget year over year and going through it by line item. And he's worked with 4 or 5 different chairs of the Board of Education. And while I think we want to focus on the kids, we also focus on the numbers, particularly now when we have such significant declining enrollment in our school system, literally from around 12,000 down to 9,000 and change, heading into the 8,000 range. We're looking at a significant decline in the number of students in our public school system, and that's been trending downward over time. And we need to take a real look at what type of infrastructure we need, the amount of teachers that we need, staff, services for the kids so they can excel, but also to be able to balance that against the tax bill that we send to our taxpayers to make sure that they match up and the folks in town, whether they have kids in school or not, are getting value for their tax dollars.
Now, I'm going to mention also, this was a shoo-in, but Essie Lebrot, she's the town
Essie
clerk.
Lebreau.
Essie Lebreau, she's the town clerk, and she got 10,322 votes. That's practically the highest of everybody, and she's been around for a long time. And should be mentioned that that's a paid position. That's the only one, but you do have to vote it in.
Correct.
Now, where's that coming from, that voting in the town clerk?
I'm not sure where the voting in, comes from. I just think that she has an opportunity to change a lot in the registrar's office, in her office. So she's brought in a lot of cost-saving strategies that she's won awards in the state as being
Town clerk of the,
yes,
right.
and
Yeah.
she is the person that many other towns send their town clerks to for training. So I just think that there's a great deal of respect for what she's done and what she continues to do. The many people that she's married in her office.
Oh, she's also a justice of the peace?
Yeah, getting all those marriage certificates out and all of that. I think, it's just the way that she goes about doing her job that I think that is endearing to anyone who comes in contact with her. So I think that once people go in, I think that she has the support from everyone.
That's right. You mentioned, sorry?
I was just going to jump in on Essie. Essie does a very nice job. She obviously was running unopposed today, so she was as relaxed as I was today. because she knew she was going back to work tomorrow. I didn't have to worry about it either because I'm not. I think I've
And
won.
neither is Judy.
There's Judy.
You're both very relaxed.
Judy, 2 years ago had the walk away. We have one more meeting on the 12th, and then we have our goodbye and swearing in on the 19th. So that will be the final transition. So I'm sure Essie's day was hopefully relaxing, but she does a very nice job here in town.
Yeah.
You mentioned the cost saving, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the going green, which was which was mentioned by all the candidates about saving money, how much money you saved, and the sustainability. You got the Bronze Award for sustainability, and you reduced spending by 18%, and you introduced LED lights everywhere. Where's that going? Is that moving forward?
Oh yeah, I think that, flipping the switch for the solar panels on the town hall, I think that that's the newest thing, but really, and having more, we got another bin for our recycling. I think trying to make sure that we have more recyclables and less waste, I think is a focus. You see more bins all over town. I think that we're a very conscientious community that cares about our environment and what we're doing for the next generation, and that is visible in everything that we do. Would you agree?
I do. John Phillips heads up the Department of Public Works and does a fantastic job. We do have a new yard waste barrel. It's interesting, over this last term, we attempted to tackle the tonnage of waste that we collect in our green barrel. And we were talking about a number of different ideas. And as these ideas were rolled out, the community spoke loud and clear, and they basically said, do not touch my barrel. I'm not buying bags. And put so much force out there. While I actually came to the table and said, we need to discuss these long-term issues, because we're actually going to start to pay to get rid of our recycling, single-stream recycling products. We've got, increasing tonnage of waste that we're getting rid of. We're running out of landfills in place to dispose it, and at some point we're going to, as John Phillips describes it, put it on a truck, to put it on a train, to take it to the Midwest and pay a huge sum of money to do that. So we really need to figure out a way to reduce that amount. But the folks in town, very progressive and environmentally friendly in a number of respects. When that was proposed, that was the final straw. People did not want to see it. Unfortunately, I think in the coming years, we're going to need to continue to look at that. I'm sure John is always ahead of the curve looking at these issues and will continue to do that. But at some point, it's one of those things that we will see a change. It's not going to be popular in the beginning, but it's like, whoever thought you'd go to the grocery store with your own bags?
Oh, I don't like that, I must admit.
Well, I hate that.
Right.
I hate that.
I don't like it, but I must admit it does make sense. It makes so much sense, but it's not pleasant.
When I'm walking out of the grocery store with 14 items in my pockets, and I'm, struggling because I don't have a bag, yeah, that's not,
But
that's not
notice
good.
you did not make the choice to purchase one, so that's the point, right?
Now, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Because that's what it is. You ask people to conserve, and I've got some great bags that I bought from Costco, and I tend to buy bags in two because I do want them to be together when they're, you've got these two in this car and those two in that car.
So maybe you should give one of the bags to him, maybe a little parting gift. That would be very nice.
And and it would be nice, and but also just to thank him for his service and his contributions to the town.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And to you as well.
Thank you.
So all our numbers are in, and basically you have 15 people running. Am I correct? 15 people?
Should be, 12 and 16.
16. And so...
Oh, I'm sorry, 17. Let's get Essay in there.
Oh, yeah.
So the top vote getters are the ones who are going to be... the top vote getters are the ones who are going to be on town council.
Correct. If you look at these numbers,
Here,
the
yes.
top 9 vote getters...
So let's take a look.
Sorry.
Let's take a look.
6, yeah, 9.
Let's take a look. So the top vote getter, Shari Cantor as mayor, Beth Kerrigan,
Oops, dear.
Beth Kerrigan as deputy mayor,
Yes.
Leon Davidov,
Yes. Then Liam Sweeney,
Liam Sweeney,
and then,
Ben Winograd,
yep, and then Carol.
and Carol Banks.
Yes,
And
blanks.
Blanks. And for the Republican,
We're looking at Lee Gold, as your new minority leader, followed by Mary Fay and Chris Williams. Mary and Chris returning to the council for another term. After that, you've got, not on the council, Rick Bush and Al Cortez, and then finally Janae Woods-Weber coming in at 2330 or so.
She won't be on the council.
She will not be on the council, nor will Al or Rick.
So I'd like to thank both of you. It's really been a pleasure, and congratulations on the term served, and congratulations to you, and thank you both for your public service. It's special. It's special that you did this for so many years,
Yep.
and it's also special that now you're not doing it. You're done.
I am done, and thank you very much for that. Let's just all of us acknowledge the candidates who ran. It is a hard thing to put your name on a ballot and go out and campaign and put your name on something and knock on someone's door or wave on a street corner and take the positive and the negative feedback that brings. And so I have all the respect in the world for people that want to go out and run and serve in our community. And the folks that volunteer in West Hartford are a very special group of folks.
I would agree. I would agree.
So thank you to all of them for running and seeking their positions.
Any other last comments, Judy?
I just appreciate everyone, as he said, as Chris said, who come out and do all the campaigning, asking for money from people who are working hard to make sure that other people understand who you are and what you believe and what you're running for is a challenge. And and doing all of that as a volunteer. So to everyone who contributed, to everyone who was a part of the process, everyone who came out to vote, thank you. Thank you for being part of what's going to keep West Hartford great.
Thank you, Chris Barnes. Thank you, Judy Casperson. Thank you, West Hartford. You've been watching Election Night Live 2019 from West Hartford Community Interactive. I'm Pat Kazakoff. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
you.